Hey everyone, it's Haley back to analyze the third case study for EDU 503, and I chose this one from the textbook, and it's the Hill versus the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, and it involved the NCAA's legality of drug testing of student athletes competing in sanctioned NCAA sports. And under this drug testing program, students were randomly selected that were competing in postseason championships and bowl football games, and they are required to participate in the random drug testing program. And the samples are taken under closely monitored conditions and then analyzed, and athletes who test positive are subject to disqualification. This case it kind of came about from the NCAA instituting a drug testing program in the 80s, so kind of before this case took place in 94, and that's because several college student athletes tested positive for drugs at the Pan American Games, and so then they required each student athlete had to consent to drug testing if they wanted to participate. And so then we got into the Hill versus NCAA case that I shall discuss now. The original challenge to the NCAA drug testing program was filed by a football player as well as a female soccer player from Stanford University, so that's what this case discusses. And both student athletes argued that the drug testing violated Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution, which granted all California citizens a constitutional right to privacy. And Stanford University ultimately intervened in the case and argued on behalf of its student athletes' rights. But both the California Superior Court and the California Court of Appeals agreed with their position, finding the NCAA drug testing program illegal under California state law. But when the California Supreme Court reviewed the case, it reached the opposite conclusion. So I think it's important to note that the NCAA drug testing program, no drug tests take place until championship competitions or the postseason football games, and the student athletes have to sign additional consent forms then, so they know what they're getting themselves into, and there's elaborate testing protocols that are devised. So first, the court stated that monitoring urination and questioning a student athlete's medical and physical condition qualified as legally protected privacy interests. And then under a reasonable expectation of privacy, the court stated that student athletes were naturally required to undergo the scrutiny of the body conditions, and that they had a choice to withdraw from participation and not undergo drug testing. So therefore, the student athletes' reasonable expectation of privacy was diminished. So Stanford ultimately intervened in the case and argued on behalf of its student athletes' rights, and both the California Superior Court and the California Court of Appeals they agreed with the position, finding the NCAA drug testing program illegal under California state law. According to the California Supreme Court, student athletes have a diminished expectation of privacy because they already, quote, undergo frequent physical examinations, reveal their body and medical conditions to coaches and trainers, and often dress in same-sex locker rooms, end quote. And the court also concluded that the NCAA has legitimate regulatory objectives in conducting testing for student athletes' safety and maintaining the sanctioning of college competition. So this ruling really just set a precedent, which is still in place today. So the NCAA still practices the strict drug testing policy, but the case opened the door for lower-level collegiate organizations like the NAIA to institute drug testing policies. And today, most students participating in athletics and activities, or any extracurriculars really, at even private and large public schools, they have a drug testing policy in place. So as an athletic director, it is important to be familiar about your program and it's the district drug policies that you have in place. Every school should have one of those in place, and there's proper paperwork that needs to be filed to make sure that students and parents have been informed about the rights regarding the policies. for their participation in athletics and activities. You have to make sure that the policy's easily accessible and that the procedures for the testing and the consequences are legal, and that they're in the handbook that the students receive at the beginning of the year, so that if they need to look back on those, they can, and they should be easily accessible for students and families.